By Monday morning, Karen had assembled what she privately called her nuclear option, a 3-inch thick binder containing every possible municipal code violation she could weaponize. Her weekend had been spent photographing license plates, measuring setbacks with a laser ruler, and documenting noise levels with a professional decibel meter she'd ordered express delivery. Mrs. Whitmore, Officer Rodriguez sighed as Karen cornered him at the police station. "You've filed 17 complaints since Saturday. We're going to need you to noise ordinance violations, parking infractions, and potential health code breaches." Karen interrupted, slapping down a manila folder. Section 12.3 of the Municipal Code clearly states that residential zones cannot accommodate gatherings exceeding 15 people without proper permits. Rodriguez flipped through her meticulously documented evidence with growing bewilderment. "Ma'am, they had permits, all of them, filed correctly, approved by the appropriate departments." Karen's left eye began its familiar twitch. "Then someone made a mistake. The only mistake," Rodriguez said gently, "might be assuming your neighbors were breaking the law." That afternoon, Karen called an emergency HOA board meeting. She'd been president for 5 years, treasurer for 3 years before that, and had never lost a vote. The 4 other board members filed into her living room with expressions ranging from resignation to barely concealed irritation. "We need to address the Morrison situation immediately," Karen announced, kicking to her first PowerPoint slide, "preserving community standards in times of chaos." Board member Patricia Woods, a retired teacher with infinite patience, raised her hand. "Karen, what exactly did Jim do wrong? He followed every rule." "He undermined my authority," Karen snapped, then caught herself. "I mean, he undermined the board's carefully crafted regulations." "By following them?" asked Treasurer Mike Santos. Karen felt her carefully constructed argument crumbling. By making a mockery of the process, getting permits behind our backs, organizing neighbors against established procedures." "You mean organizing a legal barbecue?" Patricia's voice carried that particular teacher tone that made grown adults feel like scolded children. The vote was unanimous, 4-1 against any disciplinary action. Karen spent that night pacing her living room, her mind racing through increasingly desperate scenarios. She could call the health department again. She could measure every property line for encroachments. She called. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jim Morrison. "Thanks for inspiring us, Karen. Same time next weekend? The whole street's contributing this time." Something inside Karen's chest loosened and tightened simultaneously. She walked to her window and stared at Jim's house, where a small group of neighbors were still cleaning up from another impromptu gathering she hadn't even noticed. For the first time in years, Karen Whitmore felt truly alone in her perfectly regulated world. Tomorrow, she decided, she would draft new regulations about fence heights, or maybe mailbox colors. Something, anything, to regain control. But as she pulled her curtains closed, she couldn't shake the memory of Mrs. Henderson laughing at something Jim had said, or the way the Patel children had run around with genuine joy in their eyes. Karen made herself a cup of chamomile tea and sat down to plan her next move, trying to ignore the strange, hollow feeling that had settled in her stomach like a stone. Karen Whitmore's morning coffee mug shattered against her pristine kitchen floor as she watched her neighbor fire up a massive smoker at 6:47 am, exactly 13 minutes before the HOA's approved outdoor cooking hours. The audacity. She'd specifically crafted that rule after months of research and 3 emergency board meetings. Now Jim Morrison, that insufferable man with his Led Zeppelin lawn gnomes, was practically thumbing his nose at her authority. Her hands trembled as she speed-dialed the HOA emergency hotline she'd installed last month. "This is President Whitmore. We have a code orange situation on Maple Drive. Unauthorized grilling detected." The second shock came when she marched outside in her floral housecoat, wielding a laminated copy of the community bylaws like a sword. Jim stood there in his world's Okayas dad apron, casually flipping bacon while his entire extended family emerged from various cars parked strategically along the street. "Morning, Karen," Jim called out cheerfully. "Hope you don't mind. We're celebrating my retirement. Figured we'd make it a real neighborhood affair. Karen's eye twitched. Section 4.7b clearly states that outdoor cooking is prohibited before 7 a.m. Jim interrupted, checking his watch with theatrical precision. Good thing it's 7:03 now. Thanks for the reminder, though. The third shock nearly sent Karen into cardiac arrest. As she opened her mouth to argue about the grandfather clause regarding pre-existing grills, she noticed something that made her blood freeze. A food truck was pulling up. Not just any food truck. Big Mike's BBQ Bonanza, complete with a cartoon pig wearing sunglasses and a cowboy hat. You can't have commercial vehicles in a residential zone. Karen shrieked, her voice cracking like a 13-year-old boy's. Actually, came a smooth voice behind her. We can. She spun around to find David Chen, the HOA's legal advisor, emerging from his pristine Toyota Prius with a briefcase and what looked suspiciously like a court document. The city approved a special events permit. Filed properly, all fees paid. Karen felt the world tilting beneath her sensible orthopedic shoes. That's impossible. I would have been notified. David adjusted his glasses. You were. Email sent Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. Perhaps check your spam folder. As neighbors began streaming out of their houses drawn by the smoky aroma and the sound of sizzling meat, Karen realized she was facing something she'd never encountered in her 5 years as HOA president. Organized resistance. The Johnsons brought folding chairs. The Patels contributed homemade naan. Even old Mrs. Henderson, who usually supported Karen's strictest policies, shuffled over with a casserole dish. This isn't over, Karen muttered, retreating to her fortress of beige siding and regulation height hedges. Through her window, she watched her neighbors laughing and sharing food like some kind of community. The sight made her stomach churn with something she couldn't quite identify. She pulled out her phone and began furiously typing emails to every city official she could think of. If they wanted war, they'd get war.